Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
we talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you'll be notified when we drop a new episode. And on today's episode, we're going to be doing a little bit of a studio update featuring the two of us, giving you all a glimpse into the behind the scenes of our studio practice, but specifically focusing on some pivotal experiences that we had earlier this year with retreats. So the first one being a retreat that we both attended in Marshall, North Carolina. And then a second one being a mural workshop and retreat that Adriana hosted here in Raleigh as well, that I'm so excited to hear all about.
Yeah, so let's first start with the artist retreat since we both went into it. We overlapped, I think, maybe a day and a half, but a lot of the programming and things were the same or kind of an extension of each other. So that'll be fun to kind of dive into some of the details and, how it started, location, and timeline. So, Jackie, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so this retreat that we both attended in March was absolutely amazing. This is my second year attending. So our friend Amanda is the one that hosts it, Amanda Jean from up in Canada. It's called the Squirrel Brain Chickadee Soul Retreat, and she's been doing it for several years now. This is my second year attending. And this year it was in Marshall, North Carolina. She kind of switches up the locations every time. And so I think the biggest thing going into it was I had the context of my experience last year, where last year I was a full-time artist with a full-time day job. And so even just having a few days to like explore different materials, I really went in with an exploration, concept driven focus of just whatever the experience it'll be, allowing myself to have a few days to really get into that creative mindset outside of a computer screen, outside of my day job. And that was the gift of the retreat for me. But now, this year, I am a full-time artist, which is very exciting and very nerve-wracking. And I was thinking about, okay, well, one, do I need to go on this retreat? Because technically I could quote unquote make my own retreat in my studio for like 3 different days and say, okay, I'm going to do no admin work. I'm going to do nothing with marketing and just make work, right? Because you're a full-time artist. You think you're just going to be making artwork all the time and you just have abundance of time in your schedule, which if you talk to many full-time artists, you find that the actual art making is only a small fraction of the business of having an art business. And so this year, I was on the fence about going, but I'm so glad that I did because I think it was really a great time for me to work on this one specific commission project that I had. And have that element of reconnecting with nature, really with that ultimate goal of being able to lose track of time, right? I think, especially as a full-time artist, you're also a full-time business owner where you think you would be able to lose track of time easily. But as someone who's very type A, I feel like I'm almost more aware of how I'm using my time, the structure of the day, and just always go, go, go. So it was absolutely incredible to be able to lose track of time, which was my biggest goal of the retreat. But how about you, Adriana? What were your expectations or goals going into this artist retreat in March?
So it was my first time doing Amanda's last year when she hosted it. I had a conflict with a mural that I had to do, that I had already scheduled, and they had an event that was tied to it. So I wish I would have gone last year. Because on this one, I'm like, it was definitely a lot of fun. Part of my kind of like goals with it, or some of my ideas behind it, expectations, was I wanted to reconnect with smaller scale work, believe it or not. Like I've been so focused on larger scale, especially if you've heard some of our previous studio update episodes. It's all about going bigger, bigger, bigger. And it has been the last few years, but I was like, I think it would be nice to go down to a smaller format. I mean, that being said, I did get a big sketchbook when we went to the art the art store one of the days we went out. But anyways, it was kind of like that idea. And then um having a different pace for sure. Kind of in line with what you said, Jackie. In my end, it was like trying to keep emails and meetings to a minimum. I still did have to do some follow-ups in the evening, and I had some things I had to send over. Which that part, I mean, that was part of it. That's one of the nights that I was like, but I want to hang out with them. But I also needed to adult and do some things work related. But for me, I think the thing with this one was, and part of why I was like, interested in going was that it wasn't just about art. Amanda had planned a whole bunch of different other kind of interesting activities, like somatic exercises that were creative, but in a different way. Plus, I mean, any chance to, hang out with other artsy friends is always like a good idea. But I definitely went in with not knowing too much what to expect out of it, other than knowing that, knowing Amanda being our friend, kind of like her personality and what kind of things she leans towards, knowing that no matter what she had in store, it would be fun. That's for sure. And then, terms of takeaways that came out of it, and of course, I'm curious to hear yours too, Jackie, but some takeaways I had was this idea that I want to go back to having more time out in nature, doing observational sketches. It could be in a hammock, sitting under a tree, reading a book, even if it's taking a nap under the stars. I don't know. But I used to be a lot more structured around that in the past. And in fact, a lot of the shapes in my abstract work come from observational sketches in nature. So I definitely want to get back to that a little bit. I didn't do as much of that during the retreat, but it was definitely a reminder to do more of that again. Um, and then being out there in the places we were at, one was like an old school barn that was like redone and it was like actually really cool. It almost felt like being in a tree house. And then there was like another little building that was actually more like a tree house. I don't know, being out there. Oh, and then the owner, she had all these animals like chickens and goats and sheep, like donkey, like it was very cool. But being out there in that kind of environment and up in the mountains was also like reaffirming my not so long-term goal of wanting to have a home that's surrounded by nature. And it was even a reminder that I would like this home to incorporate more sustainable materials, especially seeing some of the places we were staying at. Yes, some parts of it were a little bit rusty if you will. But I also love the idea, like the little tree house. It was mostly made with natural materials, right? And it just kind of blended into the landscape. Did not look as obtrusive, and you could say technically at some point it'll go back to the earth, kind of thing. I don't know. Don't want to get too woo into it, but it definitely like gave me this idea of like I do want that connection not just being me visiting nature, but can I make it something where I live more in nature than I already do. I already live semi-rural, but in a standard construction type neighborhood home, whatever. But I definitely like, even if it was a little more rustic, I definitely like to have something that's a little more, more entwined with our natural world, especially if it's in the mountains, like near the
Uh,
place we're at, for sure. But
yeah.
how about you, Jackie? Sorry, I get into my whole like mountains, wilderness, must go.
No, 100%. I think the space itself, I mean, we could do an entire episode fangirling on the retreat space. And I definitely want to go back even for my own like Airbnb experience in addition to maybe future artist retreat because yeah, the space itself, it was like multiple structures, absolutely gorgeous, in a very rustic, artistic way. Having stained glass in the windows and like in the kitchen, they had the old like slides from projecting images onto walls, like they collage them and more backlit, almost like a stained
That's so
glass
cool.
of art history referenced photos. It was so cool. So I took some videos if people want to see them on my Instagram, doing little montages of the day. But definitely similarly, when I definitely inspired me with my future goals of having a tiny house one day or like at least one in addition to a main house, maybe even having that as my main living quarters, who knows. I guess future will tell, but wanting it to be very similar to what this retreat was. Um, but I would say the biggest takeaways for me were similar to you, Adriana, of like wanting to intentionally prioritize that time for nature and slow down. I definitely lean on the side of workaholic as a business owner, which many do, to where even though now that I have a lot of freedom with my time and schedule, I lean on the side of a little anxious. So I have to fill it with quote unquote productive things all the time. And it's now a reminder of, okay, well, I also want to and really creatively need to prioritize that time to slow down, get out by a lake, go for a nature walk, and like fill up that creative cup of inspiration, because there's a lot of unexpected value that you get out of a change of scenery like that. And it can be accomplished without having to go to a different state or even go to a different city, but you have to intentionally change your scenery, which was a really good reminder. Um, and I think another reminder for me, again, as a very type A structured person, was remembering the value of experiences and memories that come from those in between moments. Like, okay, well, we're gonna sketch from like 1 to 3, and then around 5 o'clock, we'll start cooking dinner, to where it's people kind of in their own flows and their own routines. And then you kind of, let's say I start to get a little hungry and I walk over towards the eating kitchen area, and we just start having these wonderful, thoughtful conversations based off of what someone was journaling about. It's those unplanned interactions with fellow people, moments in history, that as a type A, you can't really plan in your schedule, which obviously logically we all know, but it was a great reminder to slow down and experience those in between moments and just like recognize where all of us are and that we're there together, which is very fun. Um, but overall, it was an amazing retreat. And I feel like I definitely came back from the retreat very energized and excited moving forward. I feel like my headspace was in a new place. And then both of us kind of came back and hit the ground running. And with that, I feel like we haven't really been able to catch up too much since then, which is crazy. We've both been, oh, well, I have this project from this day to this day. And then, oh, wait, you're out of state. Oh, wait, then I'm out of state. And I'm selfishly very excited to hear about your mural workshop that you hosted, because we haven't really been able to catch up and have me be able to ask you all the questions about it. So, tell me about your mural workshop, and I guess start from the beginning for anyone who doesn't know about it. Like, when did it take place? Where was it? And like, what were kind of your goals and expectations for hosting this?
Yeah, yeah. So, it was the first, or I should say, I've done different types of mural related workshops in the past, but they were usually either part of a community-based project or on a much smaller scale where it was just like covering little things about it. But this was the first time that I was hosting, or in this case, co-hosting, um, a workshop that would dive a little bit deeper into what was going on. Um, anyway, so definitely something interesting. It's a different kind of workshop than, say, doing a conference or doing. I've talked about this before on the podcast. Like a few years ago, I did one where it was in Dominican Republic, led by another artist, and actually, that's where I met one of the artists that ended up being on this podcast with me. But anyways, podcast that ended up being on this workshop for me. I met at a retreat, a mural retreat a few years ago. But even that one was like more painted or painting related. Anyways, I had been cooking these ideas for a while of wanting to do one that was a little bit more of a mix, right? Of the business side, of the mindset side, of the painting, the technical side, the materials, like just all the things, bringing them together. Definitely one of those research hole type of persons. That's me. So I love diving into art materials and just like all the little technical details. So to be able to put something together where I could share that with other people, to me was kind of like dream come true. So our first version took place in February. So this was the first time I was doing it, and I invited one of my favorite muralists, Olga DeShields, to come down from Maryland down to Raleigh, North Carolina, to a local Airbnb so that we could host this workshop in this case, it was all women. Doesn't mean we wouldn't have dudes, for the record, or they, thems. Everybody's welcome. But in this particular case, it ended up being 8 or 9 ladies. I think total it was like 10 of us, give or take. Anyways, it was good. It was a good size. And basically I wanted something that had a hands-on component, where we were going to be working on 2 botanical murals for the Airbnb, but then I also wanted to have, sections of it or programming with it where we would also talk about mindset and a whole bunch of different business topics. So, anyways, without getting too technical with it, but yeah, that was the synthesis of what we were trying to accomplish. It took so much planning too. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. So now thinking about implementing it, like how many attendees were there, or anything that you would do again in particular, like your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would say like the biggest thing in putting this together was trying to figure out essentially, okay, as we went through all the different planning stages of this thing, one of the things that was important was to almost like set up a mission of what we were trying to accomplish through the workshop. And in doing so, my idea was to strike a good balance between sharing painting techniques and business advice for the participants while keeping in mind that some of them were beginners and some of them were already muralists. Some of them starting muralists, some of them a little bit further along, everybody in different career stages. So, anyways, as I was like trying to come up with what we were going to do, I had to keep that as my goalpost, right? Of this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Um, let's see. You said what I would do again? Was that the question?
Yeah. So with those goals and expectations of it, what do you feel like was successful? And like, what would you like? Oh, like, well, that was a huge success part of it. We'll definitely do more of that next time.
Um, I'd have to say one of the things that worked out that I would definitely do again was I'm definitely glad we had more than one mural wall to work on. It
Mm.
definitely helps spread the space out, and help spread the participants out. I think it also gave them a chance to kind of like switch between walls if they wanted to, although mostly they stayed, whatever wall they start working on, they kind of stayed there. But also like from, having like different types of personalities, I think it was good that they could like spread out. Um, the introverts and artroverts, so they mixed. So that was good. I think another thing I would definitely do again that worked really well was having a guest artist, which in this case was Olga. She has different art techniques and styles. So it was a great addition to it. Also, she has different experiences. She works more on like sign restorations, like antique signs and vintage signs, and does a lot of lettering. Like she does a lot of different things that I haven't delved into. So it was good to have her techniques and her viewpoints on it, plus having an extra pair of helping hands for sure. If this was a workshop I was doing with just 3 people, I can manage. But a bigger group of 10, like just figuring out food and who's washing the brushes and, like, anyways, there's like so much involved that it was good to be able to say, like, hey, can you help out in the other room while I help? Like, can you help on the other mural with any questions while I help on this mural? Or, um, we need to like get the supply ready or get this color mixed or whatever. So it was like good
Yeah.
to have a partner to help run it. And then I think the other thing that I would definitely do again, besides the workshop, of course, is to partner with another Airbnb or Vrbo or, just a short-term rental owner, to give me and the participants the chance to travel to fun locations. So in this particular case, it worked out that for being the first one, and I'm glad we did it this way, it was local to me. So if we needed anything, a lot of it I already had in the storage unit, which was like 4 minutes away. So it wasn't like bad if we needed to resupply something. Hardware store was nearby. So it's like we're already in familiar territory. So
Hmm.
that was very helpful.
You also didn't have
for
to worry about like shipping all of your materials there or figuring out, okay, well, what are we going to ship versus what are we going to buy new and then have to ship
exactly.
back. It takes a
Yeah,
lot of, there's already enough logistics, it sounds like. You're like, okay, let's
yeah,
limit the logistics the first time around and then
yeah,
go from there.
yeah. Yeah, and it also like helped me figure out what would I use or what would I ship? Let's just call it that. What would I ship in a
Yeah.
future Airbnb type situation? Like there's definitely several things that I use. If it's driving distance that I would drive with to the Airbnb location. If it's flying, it's gonna be a ship it forward type situation for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was definitely helpful to see that in action. I definitely had a lot of materials and things, but there was a lot of things that as I was like packing up at the end with Olga, it was like, oh, we never touched this or we never touched this material. So it
Yeah,
was like,
that's
okay, that
huge.
was nice to have, but we didn't have to have it. Um, so anyway, so that's part of it. What,
Which I
yeah.
feel like, real quick before you move on, I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners, whether they're looking to host a workshop themselves or even just with any project. Obviously, having like international trip or a project that's out of state is very like glamorous and feels very exciting. But there is also something to be said about, okay, well, the first handful of, let's say, murals that you do, if they're close to where your home base is, logistically, that's just easier. So if you forget a specific soap or you forget a container of brushes, you can run home and grab them. Or, yeah, you know where the hardware stores are, so you can easily go get it. So, kind of like work out your system before you start applying for things out of state or like really actively running towards them. Like, if you were to host this workshop your first time out of state, there'd be so many more variables. So,
Oh
that's a
my
great
gosh, yeah.
takeaway where like sometimes it might not feel like it's like quote unquote like as cool or as glamorous, but it's such an important part of the process and will make when you are at that step so much easier. So I just want to interject with that.
Oh yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great. What other questions do you have for me?
Yes. Well, I guess piggybacking on that, of all the amazing successes of part of it, were there any learning lessons besides certain materials that you didn't use or um, adding things to your checklist of definitely pack that, I don't need to pack this? Like, what were maybe some of the things that you would do differently as the host of the workshop that if someone else is thinking about hosting a workshop, they may not think about beforehand?
I think one of the things that I didn't expect would take as much time was the food. The food logistics
Mm.
were a little more complicated than expected, especially specifically cooking on site. I mean,
Oh,
the food
yeah.
was delicious, don't get me wrong. We have zero qualms about this for the record. But I think next time we'll either stick to family style meals, which actually worked really well when I would do like platters or family style stuff that I was ordering and then it would get delivered. That actually worked out really well.
Yeah.
Or um, my bestie, like as I told her, like after the gave her the debrief, she's like, I'm a trained chef. I could have just come and cooked for y'all. And I was like, and of
Which
course, it would be a great excuse for her to come and travel with me and come and cook. So,
Very
mm,
true. Which I will say, hopping back to the Marshall retreat that we both went to in March, one of the attendees is a chef and is a cook. And that was honestly such a silver lining. I should have said that as one of like the best takeaways.
that
As an
was one of the best.
attendee, like I don't know what it is. I guess she could like feel the vibe, but as soon as I had that thought of like I'm losing track of time in my creative process, as soon as I'm like, oh, I could like go for a snack right now. She's like, okay, great. Burgers are already on the grill. They'll be ready in 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, perfect. It was
Yeah,
nice to have one point person where like it's their main focus is to like almost proactively think about the group's
food.
hunger level. And we were a much smaller group. And so I imagine with 10 plus people, it's like, okay, well, people get hungry at different times. And when someone's hungry, they're really hungry. And like, you gotta feed that now. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's like someone's whole part of the retreat.
Yeah, it was. So I'm like, I think that's definitely something I would do differently, to reduce complication. Um, but yeah, for sure, for sure. And then I think the other thing I would do is I did have a feeling that it was shorter than I wanted it to be. I
Mm,
mean, it felt fine, but I think because I had so much that I wanted to share with the participants, you know, I felt like I would have added a more day. Like we still covered all the things we needed to cover, so it's not like we skipped anything. It's just I wanted to go a little bit deeper, and we had such good conversations that it didn't feel good to be like, okay, well, we just finished talking about this topic for like, 22 minutes. Next topic, like that would not have felt natural. So if a topic took longer for us to talk about, like we just let it flow. And I think that was the right thing to do for sure. But
Yeah.
I think what I would do is I would definitely add an extra day to what we did. We did 2 full days, one afternoon and one morning added to that. So technically adds up to about 3 days. I think I would add another full day, where we could either visit a local museum, go to an art store, or even an actual paint store, hardware store. Um, and also like it would give us a little bit more of social time, like I wanted to play card games at one point. I'm like, I think I think with that I would add to like I would want to stay at the place as well. On this one, I had to go home to my dog and at night, so I was like, bye everybody. But I think it would have been really cool to stay and continue the interactions through the evening.
Mm,
Obviously, it would be a little bit different if we do one that's overseas or one where most of the people are traveling. This one, there were 4 people traveling and the rest were driving in, including myself. But I think it would be cool if we had one where everybody's traveling in, and just kind of have that experience where we stay together through the night as
hmm
well. Good or bad, because obviously, sometimes you get excited and it's like, well, we got to go to sleep to wake up early, so there's that too. But
Yeah.
anyways, I would say like,
I think that kind of goes kind of back to my point about the Marshall retreat of like seeing the value in those in between moments, which I feel like I would lean on the side similar to you as like the organizer to be like, okay, well, we need to make this as valuable and as informational and helpful for the participants as possible, but also recognizing, yeah, like the value in those in between moments. It's like the hour in between the end of a workshop and getting ready for dinner that people chit chat and talk about their experiences of projects they've done, or like that's where the actual connections and kind of like networking part of a retreat happens too, um, outside of the planned structure. So I think that's really, really important. Love that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah. Um, I think final takeaway that I would share on it is that it did take a lot of hours to put together. And it's good that I had assistance with putting it together. So I did have one of my team members help out. Olga did part of it as well. And then of course I spent bazillion hours in anticipation of it. But at the end of the day, it was fun. It was something that I definitely want to do again. Now that I have like a better idea of what I would repeat and what I would change. But yeah, I'm already like thinking about the next one. I'm already thinking about um like different locations I want to do it at, or who I'm going to do it with as well, or am I going to invite more, guest artists to be in it. Anyways, I'm still like cooking all those ideas in between the projects, but yeah. Yeah, definitely worth it.
So cool. Well, hopefully next time you host one, I will not be out of town. I already had a pre-planned trip. But it sounds like it was a huge success, and I'm excited to hear about future workshops. But up next, we're going to talk about our advice for artists who are attending, thinking about attending, or hosting an artist workshop themselves. But first, let's take a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artist resources.
We understand that life as a modern artist can be both exciting and overwhelming. Plus, there's a lot of information out there, but what do visual artists actually need?
We've spent countless hours of trial and error, weeding through tons of information to find the gold so that you don't have to waste time going down those endless rabbit holes.
We created a library of PDF resources with bonus videos that cover everything from artist documents to exhibition prep, social media to technology, sales strategies, and artist mindset, several templates, and more.
Ready to get started? Head on over to levelupartist.com/shop to level up your creative career today. Welcome back, everyone. So, Adriana, what is your advice for an artist who is looking to attend an artist retreat? Your one biggest takeaway advice.
Trying to wrap it in one is hard, but I would say go with an open mind. Try every activity if you can. Definitely interact with your fellow participants, but
Mhm.
also, especially if you're introverted or artroverted, as I like to joke, I think it's okay to have moments when you need to recharge batteries. But I would say definitely let your host know, so that they know it's more of an energy thing and not like they're bored or like not
Yeah.
feeling well, because then we'll worry as well. So, both as an attendee and as a host, I would say, yeah, that communication is awesome, just to be able to know. But yeah, I'd say, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I
Can't
think
add
that's
anything to
really
that.
I think that's really important, especially even as the host, maybe like prompting that at various points of the sessions, whether it's each day or whatever, being like, and if your social battery is running low, feel free to take time to recharge. Maybe like emphasizing like which workshops or sessions are like the quote unquote most important versus some that are like obviously all of them are great and valuable, but it'd be good to communicate like if you're gonna miss certain sessions, these would
This
be
is the
ones that might be okay to miss, you know? So that way
Yeah.
people can also like optimize their time of getting the most value. That's really good advice. As an extrovert, I would never think about doing that because I'm like, yeah, we can run off of 4 hours of sleep and just talk all night. It's fine.
Oh, no. How about you, Jackie?
That's funny. But yeah, I would say my biggest advice, if I had to pare it down, would be um to embrace the unexpected value of a change in scenery. I think as someone who is type A and very structured, I can often get too logical when it comes to my creative practice, which often come in conflict to each other to be like, well, quote unquote, like, what's the point of paying for this experience, of disrupting my schedule to go do this thing? But understanding that that change of scenery often is very helpful with shifting your energy, with shifting your mindset. And with that, my advice would also be like, don't force yourself or expect yourself to be in your normal creative flow or normal routine during one of these experiences. It will be different, and that's the whole point is to kind of disrupt your normal flow. And so I think oftentimes, if you're going in with, oh, well, I need to be quote unquote as productive as I normally am, or I need to make artwork just like I normally make when I'm in my home studio or at home, then that can be kind of jarring to expect yourself to have a specific outcome for the retreat can be frustrating. So definitely embrace the value of not really knowing what you're going into, but having a good attitude and just embracing the journey. Now, for hosting a workshop, what would your one piece of advice be?
I would say that if you can, definitely have a team in place.
Mhm.
So whether that's a partner, a friend, a guest artist, an assistant, or even Chat GPT,
Yeah.
there's a lot of logistics involved. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, like having a mission of what you're trying to accomplish through the workshop then determines what kind of logistics are involved. And as long as you do that, even if you can be a little scattered and there's like all these other things going on and competing responsibilities, but if you have that mission you're working towards, then you can also be clearer with the folks you're working with and or the technology that's assisting you on who's taking which parts of the process. So definitely for sure, don't my humble opinion is do not try to tackle this solo without any kind of assistance because unless it's a very small group, if you're doing larger and there's travel and there's a stay involved, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great advice, especially whether it's assistant at the location itself or especially even before of people asking questions of, oh, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It might even be just like a coach in some capacity or like a business partner that's helping keep you accountable with planning. I think that would be super helpful of, oh, well, what about food? Like, I didn't even think about that. I just assumed we'll figure it out. So yeah, that's really great advice. But as we wrap up today's episode, I wanted to give everyone a reminder of just remembering to reevaluate and constantly think about like how you define success. I think especially when it comes to workshops or retreats, there is always value in every experience, whether you learn something that you like, something that you don't like, or you have different wins during your experience, whether it's a physical piece that you create, an idea that you got to unpack a little bit more, just the experience itself, meeting new people in your community and building connections. Maybe it's even something as simple as there was a reading during one of the workshops and it had a new quote that you liked. That now you're going to remember that quote for the next 5 years and it's going to inspire work that you make. There are always a positive takeaway from every experience. So if you can go into a workshop kind of with your mind open, to see whatever the experience is going to be, then you can define success on your own terms. And just to remember to follow your gut too. I think oftentimes, if you want to get a little woo-woo with it and bring the spirits involved, you can. But if you feel called or like pulled to do something, oftentimes following that feeling means that there's a reason for it, right? Like you have this idea or you have this dream because you're being pulled in that direction. And you won't really know the logic behind why, but following that feeling, trusting your gut can often lead you to pretty wonderful places. So, if you're thinking about attending an artist workshop or an artist retreat, I would personally definitely recommend it. And hopefully, our advice in today's episode will help you make your decision and go into it with a better headspace.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode.
As always, our blog will be linked in the show notes where you will find episode notes and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
And if you want to stay connected with us between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to answer on the podcast, you can reach us through social media. I'm at Amate Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio across all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we are at Level Up Artists on Instagram.
You can also visit levelupartist.com to get immediate access to templates, resources, and more to level up your creative career today.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you in the next episode.